In 1965, three Harvard scientists published a major review that told America the real enemy in heart disease was fat, and that sugar was mostly innocent. What almost nobody knew: the sugar industry had secretly paid for that review, chosen the studies, and kept its own name off it. It worked for half a century. So here's where you'd expect this video to go: sugar is poison, and they covered it up. But it's not that simple. Because the loudest voices calling sugar toxic today are also selling you something. Nobody in this fight is neutral.
Okay, that's a wild opener. The sugar industry literally paid Harvard scientists.
They did, and we'll get to exactly how. But here's the plan, because this topic is a minefield of spin. On one side, the food industry has spent decades funding research that finds sugar harmless. On the other, a group of doctors and authors calls sugar a poison, as addictive as cocaine, and sells books and documentaries saying so. So we're going to ignore who's shouting and rate the claims one by how strong the actual evidence is.
Let's start with that scandal. How solid is it really?
Rock solid. It's documented history, not a theory. In 2016, researchers dug up the sugar industry's own internal letters and published them. Back in 1965, the Sugar Research Foundation paid two Harvard scientists about $6,500, roughly $50,000 in today's money, to write a review for a top medical journal. The industry set the goal, picked which studies to include, and reviewed the drafts. The review blamed fat, downplayed sugar, and never disclosed who paid for it. One of those scientists later helped write America's national dietary goals.
So that basically proves sugar is the real villain, right?
That's the trap, and it's worth slowing down for. The scandal proves the science was corrupted back then. It does not prove sugar is poison now. Those are two different claims. A cover-up in 1965 tells you to distrust that old review. It doesn't magically make today's evidence say whatever you want. So let's actually look at today's evidence, starting with the scariest claim.
Fair. The big one is sugar addictive, like a real drug.
Part of this is true. Put someone in a brain scanner, give them something sweet, and their reward circuits light up, the same regions involved in other pleasures. Reviews of these scans show it consistently. So sugar is genuinely rewarding, your brain likes it. But rewarding is not the same as addictive like heroin. Almost anything enjoyable lights up those circuits. The real question is whether sugar hijacks people the way an addictive drug does.
And does it? Does sugar hijack people like that?
Here's the best human data. Researchers screened nearly 1,500 people using the standard checklist for addiction. Addiction-like signs did show up, but for foods that combine fat and sugar, like ice cream and chocolate. For foods high in sugar alone, the signal was absent. An independent review reached the same verdict. In humans, there's no good evidence for sugar addiction as a clinical disorder. Now here's the twist this channel can't skip. That very review appeared in a journal issue sponsored by the sugar industry. So even the evidence clearing sugar came from an industry-friendly setting.
Wait, even the study saying sugar's fine was funded by the industry.
On that one, yes, which is why we don't lean on it alone. We trust it because a fully independent study with no industry money found the same thing. That's the whole method here. When a funded result and an independent one point the same way, you can believe it. When only the funded one does, stay skeptical. Both camps get the exact same suspicion.
Okay, what about the liver? People say sugar is basically alcohol.
This comes from how fructose, half of table sugar, is processed. Your liver handles it fast, and in large amounts it can turn some of it into fat. In one strict trial, people who drank a lot of fructose, a quarter of their calories, for 10 weeks did build up more belly fat and a worse insulin response. So the mechanism is real, but there's a catch. When researchers swap fructose for the same number of calories of other carbs without adding extra calories, that liver fat difference largely disappears. So it's real and the dose matters. It's not that every gram is a toxin.
So the whole sugar is a toxin idea, overblown.
As a blanket statement, yes, it's overstated. The toxin framing leans on real mechanisms, the liver and the reward system, but stretches them into poison at any dose, which the evidence doesn't support. And remember, the other side isn't clean either. The Loudest Sugar is Harmless review was written by a scientist paid by Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, and the corn refiners. The honest middle is unglamorous. Too much added sugar clearly harms you. Poison is a slogan, not a scientific verdict.
But does sugar actually cause diabetes, or just because it makes you gain weight?
Great question, because that distinction is everything. Pool 17 studies following millions of people, and each daily sugary drink is tied to about 18% higher diabetes risk. A lot of that is simply weight gain. But here's the interesting part: even after fully accounting for body weight, a smaller link remains, around 13%. So the evidence suggests sugar does something beyond just the calories, but most of the damage still runs through weight. Not zero mechanism, not all mechanism.
And the heart, is sugar its own risk factor there?
The signal is there, but softer. In one study tracking Americans for about 15 years, people getting a quarter or more of their calories from added sugar had nearly triple the risk of dying from heart disease compared to those under 10%. That held up even after adjusting for overall diet quality. But controlled trials suggest most of that runs through calories and weight. There's no convincing evidence of a separate calorie-independent heart effect. So suggestive. Dose-related, not proven as its own pathway.
All right, the classic. Does sugar make kids hyperactive?
This one is essentially busted. 23 double-blind trials gave children a known dose of sugar or a sugar-free placebo, and neither the kids, the parents, nor the researchers knew which was which. The result, no effect on behavior or thinking. The sugar high is largely in the parent's head. If you believe your child ate sugar, you perceive more hyperactivity. A newer observational study links sugary drinks to more ADHD diagnoses, but it can't untangle sleep, screens, and lifestyle so directly. There is no good evidence sugar makes kids hyperactive.
What about natural sugar? Is fruit or honey actually better than table sugar?
Split answer. Fruit versus fruit juice is a real, explainable difference. The fiber in whole fruit slows how fast the sugar hits you, and whole fruit actually tracks with lower diabetes risk, while juice tracks with higher. So context genuinely changes the outcome. It's the same molecule misses the point. Honey versus table sugar is much weaker ground. The trials are small and contradictory, and the sugar your body absorbs is basically identical. So whole fruit, yes, honey as a health food. The evidence is mixed and thin.
So how much is actually okay? Do the official limits hold up?
Partly, and here the honesty cuts both ways. The World Health Organization's advice to keep added sugar under 10% of your calories rests on decent evidence for weight and tooth decay. But their stricter under 5% target, the one that makes headlines, is graded in their own words as very low-quality evidence. They're being transparent, so we should be too. For kids, the American Heart Association suggests capping added sugar around 6 teaspoons a day, well below what most kids actually get.
So after all that, the honest verdict?
Too much added sugar genuinely harms you. That part is real, measurable, and worth taking seriously, especially from sugary drinks. But the scary extremes don't hold. Addictive like heroin, no good human evidence. A poison, overstated, making your kids bounce off the walls. A myth that 23 trials put to rest. The 1965 cover-up was real and shameful, but it explains the past. It doesn't prove sugar is poison today. The truth is less dramatic and more useful. It's the dose that turns sugar from a treat into a problem. So what do you actually do? You don't need zero sugar. Focus on the biggest source for most people, sugary drinks, and cut those first. Eat whole fruit freely, the fiber comes with it. Treat honey and natural sweeteners as sugar, not medicine. And if you have diabetes or liver disease or you're feeding a child, that's a conversation with your doctor or dietitian, not a slogan.
No hype, no fear, just the evidence. And like our trickiest topics, this one went through an independent research board that checked every source and where the funding came from on both sides. Next up, is dairy actually bad for you? Subscribe and we'll keep going, one myth at a time.